Hi there, it's James from J Squared Restorations. Just a quick video update to let you know how we're getting on with this Orchestrelle project. First off, a thank you to all of the response that we got from video number 1. It was great to hear from people, lots of people offering support, help, telling us that they have a similar instrument or doing the same thing, or that, wishing us luck with this challenge. So for the past 2 weeks, we have more or less done nothing but screws. At the moment, we've gone through kind of each of the different parts of the Orchestrelle, and what we're finding is, in general, every single screw is destroyed. There'll be a little bit more from Zaphod on that in a minute. But to give you an idea, we have a bill of materials here, and if I look at the screw counter, it tells us that we have 4,076 screws to replace. A bit of a challenge there. We've also got 811 springs of varying sizes. Now, again, most of these look to need replaced, sadly. We need to come up with a solution for that. So, other than that, we've been learning what it is that we actually have, taking bits off, cataloguing them, going through them, understanding what links to what should go where. Basically, every single screw at the moment is looking to be replaced. And it's been a little bit tedious, but we have learned a lot. We've got to see how each and every bit of the unit works, and get an idea of all the parts that we need to buy. So it's not just been screws that have been the nightmare. We have leather, felt, the springs, which I've mentioned before, which all also need replaced, are certainly solutions found for. So, just giving you a quick tour here of our shelves full of bits and bobs. Some of you might recognise the parts, some might be thinking, what on earth are they? Well, I won't go into too much detail in this video, but it gives you an idea of the number of parts that we're looking at to replace and the rough condition of them. We had a few questions about the state of the Orchestrelle when we found it. I will try to put up some pictures so you can see that it really does need, a lot of love. Every single bit, really, it looks as if it's probably been stored in a damp garage for a number of years. The amount of rust and corrosion on the metal parts is challenging. And the wear on the wooden parts is, in general, okay. There are a couple of bits that need replaced. There's another video that you'll see where we've found some woodworm. We definitely have our work cut out for us. And we haven't really got into the meat of it all yet. Sadly, it's been a cataloguing and purchasing experience to date. We got a few questions about this box. It's very important. That there's the tracker bar, which has been taped up just to keep it safe. It's a wooden tracker bar, not a brass tracker bar. The rest of the scroll box is in pretty awful condition, and we think may need completely replaced. Fortunately, the mechanism's in okay shape. Otherwise, everything that we've found, we believe we can repair. We've got a lot of snapped off screws, which are going to represent a significant challenge. For those that don't know, this piece which is on the floor here are called ranks, reed ranks. There are 4 there. We are missing one, sadly. We've yet to work out which instrument it is that we're missing. We think it might be the piccolo. Which for scale is about 2.5, 3 feet tall, sits on top of that, making this quite a monster. Again, a few people sent us a couple of pictures of the original catalogue for sale, and I will try to put a picture of that in as well to give you an idea of what this thing looks like when it's done. So, a little from Zaf on screws coming up shortly. Thanks very much, and we'll see you soon.
Hi, Zaphod here. So James has told you we've been working for the last 2 weeks on cataloguing all the screws, trying to get some of the assemblies dismantled. He's shown you the racks with all the material there. It's very important to put some of these pieces of wood nice and flat so that they don't end up bowed in while stored. But just getting them apart's been a big challenge. So you can see here some of the different screws we've taken apart, some of the old ones, some of the ones we're proposing to replace with. Old screws, very complicated. They used to have numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, right the way up to say the 16 or higher. And seems these days they really only stock the even numbers. So you've got to be careful. Have you got a number 10 or a number 9? Also, same problem with lengths. As you can see here, very subtly different lengths on some of these. The new ones, they don't supply the same lengths necessarily. So we really do need to be careful. We've got to treat each screw and each hole as an individual item and really assess it, because the last thing you want is a snapped off screw, because that's just more work. And you can see the smaller the screw, the more difficult it is to get it out if it's been rusted. One of the interesting things we found is 2 screws, they can be right next to each other, part of the same assembly, yet one's pretty good condition, one's pretty rusted up and tough. Got to really be careful what's what. These are the same. Also, you can have some, it seems, where the shaft is of the same size, but then the head is of a different size. We're not sure if this is because it's a modern versus a traditional screw here, or if they're different numbers, but they've got the same shank. When you look it up, they do say to use different drills for the pilots in different screw gauges, but it tends to vary manufacturer to manufacturer. And these screws made back in the day, they could have been made by hand essentially. So the tolerances are a little bit wider. Other interesting things are the more modern screws seem to have a slightly skinnier shaft and sometimes a slightly different taper on the thread, but we're lucky in that the pitches seem to match and the width is close enough, but we are going to have to be careful with every screw. Some screws we can't find in stainless steel, so we're having to look at brass alternatives. This is mostly the smaller screws, as you can see here. This is a countersunk and a button head, but we just had it for example. Mild steel screws seem to be even harder to find. We think maybe the marine industry has meant that there's more stainless screws, so look out for them. They seem to be of a similar price as well. Finishing, it seems most of what was in this originally was a kind of bright finish. Could be plated, it could just be polished. But over the years, different types of screws have been put in here. We're not 100% sure what's original yet, but we think maybe this is a black oxide finish, which might have been an older repair, and this is a black Japan finish, which might be a more modern repair. But we think ultimately they were probably shiny and bright. So looking into that more, we've had to learn a few tricks to get these screws out without destroying them. We've tried using a hacksaw to get it flat again. Junior hacksaw is good to start with, and then you can work out to a bigger one. These slots aren't always perfectly square, so you've got to be aware of a bit of a taper. Sometimes it's easier to file 2 flats on and use it like a bolt. Sometimes you have to go right across. This one was just mocked up for the video, but if this slot's really bad, sometimes you have to go at 90. Just be careful not to go too deep and keep watching what you're doing. Treat every screw like it's delicate. So why do we have to replace all these screws? Well, the problem is if you get a snap screw, it's a lot of extra work, and it's not always obvious that a screw is going to be rusted underneath when you first look at it. Some of them give you a good clue. Some of them appear to be shiny. It seems that some screws may have been treated with an oil, or possibly tallow might have been traditional, and therefore have got away with much less rust over the years. And we'll certainly be putting some sort of lubricant in when they go back in. Many screws these days come with a lubricant, such as an oil. Tallow may have been traditional, so we'll look at that. Vaseline we've heard people have used later on in history. But we found, you know, if you snap a screw, you're in big trouble. You've got a lot more work to do. And if, say, 3 out of 4 screws come out fine, but 1 snaps, maybe we could find a replacement for the original, but so many are in too poor a condition to reuse that we've decided it will be more appropriate to replace all of them, because if you have 5 out of 6 screws looking like this and 1 out of 6 looking like that, it's not going to look very nice. Also, it will make it a lot easier for the next restorer in maybe 100 years' time. Different ways they can fail. The head can snap on you. The head can completely be removed. The screw itself will just snap where you don't see it. Just have to be very careful, take it slow. And some of the tools we've had to use, obviously measuring them, finding out what our measurements actually mean in terms of the old screw gauges, getting them cleaned up in the first place, getting the slots cleaned up enough that they'll take a screwdriver. Another option is make sure you're using a sharp screwdriver and lightly tap it with a hammer. Different ways of holding hacksaw blades, got to be very careful not to nick the wood. So yeah, not a lot of fun screws. Be careful, be patient, make sure you know what you've got and what you're replacing them with. And yeah, we think these stainless fasteners will do a nice replacement job and make the restoration job much easier for someone in 100 years' time. So thanks for watching, please click like and subscribe, and see you in the next video.